Hello and welcome back around the bonfire. It's John and Tim back for yet another match day preview and with yet another special guest. First Golden Gopher on the show, Kyndra De St. Aubin joining this week, MLS match analyst for Apple TV. Kyndra, thank you for being here, joining a couple fellow Midwesterners to talk a little ball.
Thanks. I appreciate the Gopher reference. I was a Badger for a semester, so I've got the rodents covered, or if that's what they're called. I got them nailed, so I was both, which is like a traitor in these parts. You know, it's like Brett Favre going from a Packer to a Viking. It's like it doesn't happen.
I was gonna say, how often do you actually mention that when you're out and about? Because I'm betting it probably doesn't go over that well.
Well, especially because my family are Vikings, fans. Like my daughter, my husband, everybody, but like. The rest of my family are Packer fans, so very rarely do I get to mention anything about Wisconsin. My daughter's been trying to change that on my birth certificate since the day she came onto the earth. So there's a fierce rivalry with anything Wisconsin and Minnesota, as I'm sure you guys all are familiar with.
It's funny, I feel like the entire Midwest is just every other state hating Wisconsin. Look, there's a little bit of rivalry with some folks in Minnesota, but it's mostly just the folks up top. I mean, for me, I'll say that for me. Kyndra, it's great to have you here as we preview, I think, one of the best matchups of the weekend. We colloquially here call it the USMNT Twitter Derby, right? BJ Callahan and Gregg Berhalter facing off yet again. Gregg Berhalter's side yet to pick up any points in these matchups. Reigning from 2024. They had a 7-1 thumping and then a 2-0 loss at home, unfortunately, for the Fire. And now Nashville appears to have taken another step. They're top of the table in both the Eastern Conference and when you account for goal differential, MLS as a whole. And the Fire enter this game off an international window, hoping that their defense that they have spent all offseason bolstering will carry them through. Kyndra, I always kind of love to start with a little bit of just kind of high level as you prepare for this game, kind of what you're looking at in terms of what you expect to see Saturday a little bit.
Well, I was fortunate to see Nashville play Columbus a couple weeks ago, which we all know Columbus is not the Columbus of old either. They're trying to sort themselves out. And Chicago I've had over the last couple seasons multiple times, which especially, no offense to any previous regimes, but under Gregg Berhalter, I've just really enjoyed him as a coach. Enjoyed his conversations that we get to have with him, enjoyed his style, his methodology, his philosophy, his overall big picture of things, where I felt like Chicago Fire became directional. They became not rudderless, and an understanding and a clear understanding of where he wants his team to go. And it's just a matter of time before everything is clicking, and making the playoffs last year was huge, as we all know. Zinkernagel, for me, was one of the best. I don't even know what we call him. I'm not sure if we call him a winger, a forward, or whatever. He's like a Renaissance man. But yeah, and Nashville, I mean, are you kidding me? They get Christian Espinoza? That's not fair. That's one of those things where you're like, really? Okay, Christian Espinoza, throw him up there with Serge and Hani Mukhtar. That's not fair. That's not fair to anybody. And I'm calling that last goal he scored in that 5-0 thumping over, Orlando City. I'm calling that a shot, not a cross, because that seems very Christian Espinoza-like. I know there was a little bit of debate about that. So this is just going to be a great match. I'm looking forward to it. And let's not forget, though, I mean, Nashville also has Club America on Tuesday of next week, and the last time I saw Nashville, they had Miami coming up in the CONCACAF, so they heavily rotated their squad. So I don't know what Nashville for sure is going to look like, but I have this feeling that regardless of who they put out there, they're going to be pretty solid. And same with Chicago. I mean, they have a great group, but they've got guys coming back from international duty, some guys who have traveled. So you never know coming off an international window exactly what everybody's going to look like with the travel and things, but I'm expecting a great game regardless, and I guarantee Chicago does not want to get beat by Nashville once again.
Yeah, it's almost a little reminiscent of Nashville's relationship with Miami, where they seem to play all the time, and it's kind of one-sided. I mean, that is the way it is for Nashville with everybody right now. They haven't lost since they lost to Miami in the playoffs last year. Unbeaten through 9 in all competitions to start the year. And Kyndra, you mentioned they've rotated for the CONCACAF Champions Cup matches already. And they've won games coming off those breaks, right? So it's kind of interesting looking back. Tim, I know one thing we've spent a ton of time talking about is the defense, right? The Fire, obviously, and entering 2026, knew what they needed to do, and it was fix that back line. And now, this is maybe the first time they've gone up against a really formidable attack, right? No disrespect to Houston or Columbus or Montreal, right? But this is, for all intents and purposes, the best attack in MLS. You have 3 MVP potential guys in Suraj, Mukhtar, and now Christian Espinoza sitting in that front line. I would love to hear from both of you. Tim, I'll let you go since I've been talking so much. Just kind of, do we think this Fire defense can actually hold up, and maybe who wins the day there?
It's going to be one of the big challenges, right? And whether it's the, normal best 11, starting 11 for Nashville or not, like, it's not like they're not going to be there at the game. And if needed, it's not like BJ Callahan can't make, 3 second half subs if it looks like that's what he feels like he needs to make the game. And a challenge the Fire have had is playing consistently and keeping switched on for 90 minutes. Like, that cost them a win in their opening game in Houston. And there are games where you can not do that and still manage to steal a result. And Nashville, regardless of who is starting and who is playing, is not going to be one of those opponents. And I don't think that the Fire have really stayed switched on for 90 minutes, other than maybe that one game in Columbus, which ended 0-0, and they, didn't manage to finish any chances. And so it's not like that's like a banner, right? That's been the challenge. And I think that they're going to have to just do better and stay focused. And Gregg shared with us today, Mboazi's still not back from national team duty, flying when we're recording on Thursday, expected back sometime on Friday. And who knows what time his body will think that it is. Who knows how much he's been sleeping while traveling for whatever, like 20 hours. And it's going to be a challenge just having everyone there.
And that's a great point, because I think we can all talk about whether these guys travel internationally and they played or not, or they sat on the bench or they participated, but when they're traveling around the world and you don't know what the traveling circumstances are, how many connections they're having to make. And either way, you're sitting on a plane. I don't care who you are. It's just a lot, and the time change, and what time is he going to go to bed? Forget about time, when is he going to wake up? But also, too, Jack Elliott, I think that's another question mark. I know he's just coming back into training, but dealing with that illness. And I think Gregg Berhalter mentioned today on his media availability with the press that he lost 8 pounds, and Jack Elliott is, that just takes, any illness takes a lot out of you, but let alone when you're dealing with something. So you talk about that center back position, and then you're relying on Waterman, who's a veteran, which is fantastic. Is Gutman good to go because he had missed a lot of time and he just played against Philadelphia? So how is he going through training? There's a lot of question marks, and every team deals with them. But at the same time, when you're a Chicago Fire team that's trying to solidify your back pair, your back line and your center back pairings, along with going against one of the best attacks probably in Nashville right now in the league. And oh, by the way, I hate to burst anybody's bubble, but against Columbus when they rotated, they didn't start any of those guys. They brought Espinoza, Suraj, and Mukhtar on in like the 85th minute when it was 0-0, and they scored in the 91st. And it was, two of those guys creating the opportunities. Yeah. So he's kind of got those in his back pocket. It's going to be a tough task.
If you've Mboazi, right, and you are struggling because it is some other time of day for you and you have not slept consistently for 2 days in a row in, Lord knows how long, that's a real challenge. And like Jack Elliott listed, I think 183 pounds at 6'6". It's not like the guy had 8 pounds to lose.
Exactly.
Talking to a doctor about, what he may have gone through, just like that diagnosis and then recovery from it. I mean, the deconditioning can happen fast and it can take a long time to recover, regardless of how healthy you were before. And what I was told is that it's younger, healthier, mostly guys that sometimes have the biggest problem because they don't know to listen to their body when it's saying slow down and stop. And as a pro athlete, like, that's not an option you have sometimes.
Yep, for sure. Great point.
Yeah, it's a tough place to be missing anybody, right, for the Fire. You enter the year with 3 quality center backs and you think, oh, this is great. And then one of them goes out, the other one gets stranded in South Africa for a couple extra days, and now you're looking at, with all due respect, because they're talented players in their own right, Christopher Cupps and Sam Rogers, and wondering who you may have to call on come Saturday. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tim, if you had something.
Yeah, and I think that, Sam Rogers, we haven't seen a lot of this year, and he's also had injury trouble. So it's really going to be, potentially a banged up back line. I mean, maybe Elliott's good to go. Maybe Elliott's good to go for 90 minutes. I think the question is between, if you've got 2 center backs that you're not 100% confident can go 90, I mean, that's not an easy question for Gregg to have to deal with.
Yeah, which means we'll definitely see a back three, just knowing the way this goes. Now, on the positive side, the Fire have never been the ones to, sacrifice and give up a late goal, right? We've never seen them drop points in that way either. Kyndra, I'm curious, kind of, again, watching the league as a whole. I know you cover NWSL too, so you were here doing a Stars game last week, if I remember correctly. I'm curious, like we have looked at kind of this attack as, the three big pieces, right? Hugo Kuipers, Philip Zinkernagel, who we obviously already touched on from last year, and Jonathan Bamba, who has really started to emerge as a goal threat this year and really more dangerous in box as opposed to just connecting play. And the question mark, I think, has been over Philip Zinkernagel's head for a large part of this year. And so I'm curious, kind of, as you've prepared for the game or just as you've been watching throughout the year, if kind of a higher level, sometimes just like to get some input on, should we be pumping the brakes on 65, 68 goals for the second straight year from this Fire team, and maybe we're just counting on the defense a little more than the offense?
I think it should be the point that I think this offense is completely capable of it. I think that this is an opportunity, and not just, let's not just pick a number. Let's just talk about the production and the comfortability of the league as these players continue to grow in it. I think Bamba is going to come back in this season, and he already has, with a different sense of confidence and understanding of this league and what he needs to do, what he's being asked to do. You've already talked about Zinkernagel. I'm not sure what his concussion protocol situation is coming off that knock, which did not look good against Philadelphia, and how much he's been training. But if he's capable of going, he was by far one of the best wingers, attacking players that I've seen in this league. Completely flown under the radar when he first came to Chicago. Now everybody knows who he is, so he can't do that anymore. But also, Gregg Berhalter is saying he has the freedom to kind of float inside. He can play on the right or the left. He can play the final pass. He's always going to work defensively. Well, now you have Bamba, who is willing to do that. You've got Zinkernagel, who can do that. You've got Robin Lod, who I'm very familiar with in his Minnesota United days, who can do that and play just about anywhere. You've got Davila, who understands that everybody is running a lot, so now I need to run a lot and work really hard if I want to be on the field. You've got Saletros, who's been really good and solid. So for me, if you can hold down the fort in the middle, in the attacking thirds of the field, and get some goals from Kuipers with great service, I think that this expectation for Chicago Fire should be ratcheted up. I know playoffs was a luxury last season, but let's just keep building. That's how I would view Berhalter's plan with the quality of the players that he has in place. And you're not bringing in guys right now in the middle of the season. They were there for preseason. They were there understanding, his method and how he wants this thing to operate. And that's not even taken into account some younger players like Sergio, who's not gotten a lot of minutes, but played prior because of injuries. Gutierrez is no longer there, so you got to fill that kind of void. I think this is an opportunity for Chicago Fire to just keep building. And you're going to be going into a new stadium soon. Like, this to me is just like positivity on positivity. And if the defense can just figure out a way to lock it down and be consistent, you're going to score goals. And you still have Chris Brady between the pipes, assuming he stays healthy. So I think it's all positive for them. And so far, Berhalter, with all these different opponents he's played this season, because every one has been very different. No opponent has played the same way. I think that he can look at this and go, okay, we're going to go into the World Cup break. Maybe he has a goal for the World Cup break. Where do I want to be? What's our record want to be? How many goals against? Kind of look at it that way, and then figure it out after the break where we're going to be at.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question because it is such a unique time for this season to sort of take a pause, because normally it's like it feels like the summer window happens so late that it's almost, you can bring a guy in and maybe they will help you win 2-3 games, and maybe that's a difference in your season, maybe it's not. But this year it's, more than half the games are happening after you can bring players in, after you can get guys back from injury, which hopefully the Fire will have with Andre Franco. And it's a unique challenge. And like, I think it's certainly, it's the last time that we're going to be having this kind of a season, right? And I think that the Fire want to try to capitalize on, they're obviously not favorites to be making it to MLS Cup, even like the conference finals, but they can potentially make some more noise ahead of what would be a very short year next year in the 2027 sprint season, maybe be more of title contenders then, I think would be the hope if everything goes right. I think the challenge is keeping that level and mentality for the group staying high, because I think right now it's like 2 wins in 5 games, 2 losses in 5 games, 1 draw in between them. Like it doesn't feel like it's really add another level yet based on those things. But I think that a win against Nashville, where the team has only won once, would be huge. And that could just suddenly, like having 3 wins, 2 losses, and a draw with one of those wins against Nashville, I think suddenly feels like a completely different narrative than if it goes the other way.
Yeah, I mean, Kyndra, if you disagree, would love to hear it. But I feel like from a national perspective, right, if the Fire win this game, that's kind of announcing yourself to the league, right? You're the first team to beat Nashville in 2026. They've only allowed 2 goals all year, right? It's 15 goal or 13 goals, 2 against. So they've not only been a prolific scoring offense, they've been a really strong, stark defense. And Tim, to your point there, just in terms of consistency, like, this will, I would expect, to be the 6th different lineup in 6 games for the Fire, right? They have not started the same 11 at all this year, right? It will be 6 iterations in 6 weeks, or 7 weeks, 6 games, whatever you want to call it. And if Jack Elliott or Philip Zinkernagel can't go, that trend is only going to continue.
I think to that point too, Gregg Berhalter is a big statistical, data analyst guy. And so he's not going to just go based on results. And we all know results is what, how you keep your job in this business. So he's not denying that. He's not like, well, we have 85% possession and look at our XG, but we're 0-6. Like, he's not that guy. But, he's going to be the guy that says, even when they were facing Philadelphia, right? He said, I understand Philadelphia hasn't won, but if you go back and watch their games and you look at statistically what they do well, they just haven't been able to find a way yet. So I think he's very straightforward in that sense. And I think that's how he's looking at his team now. And just like the DC, I think it was the DC game where he was so mad afterwards, disappointed in how that game went. But he said, well, it's one of those where after you go back and watch it, it's not as bad as I thought. And we had these couple of mistakes. And if we didn't do this on this set piece and we didn't do that on that, then, we've got a lot of other things to figure, good things that have been figured out and that we're only on the upward trajectory. So I think he feels like now you're more in this position of this isn't overhaul time. This is like building on year one. Everybody understands what the methodology is, the philosophy is, what I'm asking of them. There's a cohesiveness about the group, and now it's just getting it all together and put together in the same performance, which, as we know also in soccer, is like the hardest thing to do, and to do it consistently. So I think there's more good than bad, even if all the results haven't been there. And it's a long season, and when you're going to take a month off in the middle of it and have to come back and have another little mini preseason and make everybody like do the beep test again and get back on the horse, and you have Leagues Cup, and you have, it's going to be a lot in the second half, but it's going to be interesting to see how teams handle it.
That it will.
I'm not doing the beep test anymore, ever again, for the rest of my life. I'm done.
It's kind of the sweet spot of, I never have to actually do any physical activity, but we get to talk about it all the time, and that's pretty good too.
Talk about others, and like that's one of the reasons that you have kids, right? Is that you can make them go through it for you. You're like, see what this was like? Yeah, it was hard.
Every now and then you're like, gosh, that guy is getting so slow, and it's like, all right, not only is he younger than me, but also like I don't think I could be that fast if I tried.
That's like when it's like 60 degrees and like beautiful outside, and I'm up in the booth, and I'm like, man, these guys could run all day in this temperature, and I'm like, well, they could, but I can't. But they can, That's my phrase. Like, I remember a long time ago, I'm old now, and I could do that, and I look forward to those days. But now I'm like, yes, they should be able to run all day without pulling a hamstring. I just, try to get to the fridge without pulling a hamstring.
There you go. Awesome. Kyndra, I know we're kind of bumping up on time here. So we really appreciate having you. Kyndra De St, Aubin, MLS match analyst for Apple TV. She'll be on the call this weekend as Chicago Fire take on Nashville SC at Soldier Field. So if you're in Chicago, you should also be there. But if you're not there, you should be listening to Kyndra call the game on Apple TV. Kyndra, anywhere else we can point folks towards to find you on socials or anything like that if you have something you want to promote?
No, I don't, but I do want to know what your prediction is for the weekend. You guys do they make you do these things like they make us, and then people slam us later, like, oh, rank
John
everybody.
John makes me do them. I hate doing
and
them.
I was going to say that.
I just get it thrown back in my face. Like, I literally had the sporting director of Minnesota United like screenshot me a picture of where I said the team was going to finish last year, in my preseason prediction. So, your predictions for Saturday's match for Chicago Nashville, and maybe how you see the season going for Chicago, since you guys are in the weeds.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. I'm the guy who makes Tim do the predictions.
Well, now I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, after that opener, I had the Houston Dynamo in my mentions having some fun at our expense because we did not think that game was going to go the way that it did. I've gone back and forth. I think this is going to end up like a 2-1 loss for the Fire. I just think Nashville is in such good form, and I don't know that the Fire can quite match the form. Right? Later in the year, who knows what can happen, but I think for this week, it could be an unfortunate result.
Yeah, and I told Ben Wright for 615 Soccer recently that, in coverage that came out today, that if you're Nashville, this probably should feel like a trap game, right? Like coming off the international break, having fewer key players going off on international duty and all of like the way that they've just been a train moving through the season so far. But, although that would be on brand for MLS, it just feels like that's kind of asking a lot because the Fire have got a lot of players that are coming back from injury. And so I said a 3-1 loss. I think it could maybe feel closer than a 3-1 loss, even if that's what the score is. But the Fire so far haven't had a 90 minutes where it's all really clicked. And this just does not feel like the most likely time for that to start.
You've got to love the two local guys having no hope in the game, right? No, but
hold on. I was just recording that. I'm just going to send it over to
somebody will. It'll probably be Colin. Shout out Colin, very popular Twitter user. But no, and then I think like season at large, one thing we've kind of talked about is like this team did play its best ball at the end of the year last year, right? And a lot of that was some summer window changes, but I do think a lot of it is Gregg Berhalter asks for a very specific thing from all of his players, and I do think that'll take time, even with a lot of veteran guys in this lineup now, like a Robin Lod, like an Anton Saletros. So I think this team is only going to get better. And then I've said this a lot about Gregg Berhalter. It's like once you get to the playoffs, it's a knockout tournament, and there aren't a ton of coaches in MLS aside from the more established guys who have a ton of knockout tournament experience. And that is one thing he has done. He's won trophies in that way. So you have to feel good about your chances, especially when you have a guy like Hugo Kuipers up top. And if Jonathan Bamba is who he's been the first 5 weeks, I think that completely changes what October, November, December could look like when it all comes down to it.
Agreed. I think if everybody, this is always the thing, right? If everybody's healthy, which everybody's not ever healthy at any team at the end of the season. But in general, if you can get to that last stretch of the season and the last third of the season with everybody sort of feeling good about what you're doing, I think it could come together for them. So it'll be exciting to see. I like that he has a lot of players that can play multiple positions, which sometimes can be a negative. Robin can play every place but goalie, basically, is what everybody used to say here. And then Zinkernagel is so dynamic. You get Franco back. You get, you have Bamba, who's electric. And Kuipers is just waiting for service, and he's been getting it for the most part. So I think it could be a really fun midfield and attack if they can get it going. And fans are going to be continuing to pour into the stadium, which is also phenomenal because that's what you need. You want the fans to feel like they're entertained. So.
Yeah, I thought the line last year whenever anybody asked me if they should go to a game was like, it'll be fun. Like, I don't know who's going to win, but I promise there will be a lot of goals and you'll have a good time. Like, it'll be fun to watch. I can guarantee that.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, I think a great neutral game on Saturday. Sorry, did I cut you off, buddy?
No, yeah, exactly. This seems like it's going to be another one that'll be fun for the neutrals. Not just because BJ and Greg are close friends off the pitch, and that I think always makes the rivalry feel a lot more intense when they've got teams facing off against each other. And I know that it'll be fun to keep an eye on the sideline for this one, just to see how they're interacting. So, yeah.
Point well taken, I should say. Once again, Chicago Fire taking on Nashville SC in the USMNT Twitter derby this Saturday at Soldier Field. Thank you again, Kyndra, for being here. Kyndra De St. Aubin from MLS Match Analyst from Apple TV. Thank you for being here and joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, guys. See you Saturday.
Awesome. Thank you, Kyndra. Thank you to the listeners for joining us around the bonfire, and come on, you men and women.